Alright guys, how's it going? In this video we're going to be analysing some comments from David Ornstein. Now for those of you that don't know, David Ornstein is one of two journalists that you should only really pay attention to concerning Liverpool Football Club. They're the only two that are ever going to really tell you anything significant. They're the two journalists that are closest to the club. I do not pay attention to another journalist other than those two regarding the Reds, to be honest with you. The others, you know, that clique of Liverpool journalists, you know, they do serve some purpose, I guess, with some things, or maybe they've all got different qualities in different ways. But the two trusted journalists from Liverpool Football Club's point of view is Ornstein and Joyce, Paul Joyce at the Times. But today we're focusing on Ornstein, who writes for The Athletic. And I pay extremely close attention to what these guys say. And so do some of you, right? And that's why you've been leaving comments saying, oh my God, Dunk, have you seen what Ornstein said about Slot? So we're going to take a look at that. I'm going to read to you what Ornstein has said. And then I've got Dave, my AI assistant, you know Dave, to analyse it all for us. Now, for those of you that don't know, Dave isn't just like some like ChatGPT or some standard AI. Dave's been trained probably for about a year and a half now to analyse the football news articles, the journalists that write them, and the publications that push them on us, etc. And the benefit of doing the analysis through Dave is that he sees things that I don't see, and he has a log of everything Ornstein has said, so he can quickly compare previous things he may have said, look for a change in tone. I do this with Dave, with all the journalists, all right? So we've got a massive wealth of information. It's very helpful to the channel. Now, before we proceed, I just want to let you know I am planning on hosting a live stream this evening. It's going to be 6:30 UK, I think, all right? So please do come along then, especially if you're going to want to talk about this article. So I'm going to quickly go through, or as fast as I can, go through the comments he said. And I think you're going to find the analysis very interesting. So I think if you're going to watch one thing today, watch this video. I mean, if you've already read or you've listened to the words he said on this podcast, on the Athletic podcast, maybe you can fast forward to the analysis, but I'll leave it with you. So let's go through all the topics that he went over yesterday. Now, this is the important one, which is what we're going to be focusing on with the analysis. On Arne Slot and managerial stability, Liverpool, from what we hear, are steadfastly behind Arne Slot. He's under contract until 2027 and they want him to be their coach. The hierarchy are determined that he is the man to get things right. There is no sense of an immediate change being sought. They view this as a long-term project and believe in the profile of the coach they appointed. Now, obviously, those quotes there, it goes against a lot of the reporting we've seen, a lot of the whispers we're hearing and things like that. So people are naturally like, hang on a minute. And because it's Ornstein, not just some random journal in the Liverpool clique, people are like, "Ooh, this is interesting, right?" What I would say, the bit that stands out there for me is where it says the hierarchy are determined that he is the man to get things right. Well, the hierarchy would be determined, I think, if they appointed him, because if you were Richard Hughes, for example, or Michael Edwards, and you went to your bosses and went, this is the man to do it, you are going to be in a rush to sack him, are you? Because it makes it look like you fucked up. So that's what I would say there. No immediate change. Well, that means now. So I would agree with that statement anyway, even if they were looking at a plan B in the summer, right? And I will stick with my same feelings about all of this, guys, that it's his job to lose, it's his job to keep. Results will dictate his future, right? David Ornstein on the contrast with Tottenham. The return of Michael Edwards as CEO of football and the work of Richard Hughes has provided a buffer of stability during this period of inconsistent on-pitch form. It prevents the kind of knee-jerk reactions we are seeing elsewhere. There is a messaging of extreme calm coming from the boardroom. Big praise there for Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes. And I often feel that when a journalist bigs up people, especially when they go over the top with that, which I'm not suggesting he's doing so here, I always think, was that the source of the news? Do you know what I mean? I always think, was that the source? You know what I mean? Okay, on the multi-window transition strategy, the word from the hierarchy and Michael Edwards is very clear on this, is that this is a multi-window transition. This is the bullshit that's coming. I haven't read these quotes yet, by the way. But now we've got multi-window transition. This is going to be the phrase of the summer if they keep slow. It's a multi-window transition. You guys, you know that they coin a phrase every year. This is it. It's a multi-window transition. You don't replace a decade of Jurgen Klopp and overhaul the spine with players like Wirtz and Isak in 6 months without some turbulence. They are... Oh, come on, David. The football's fucking shite. They are calling it a calculated evolution. The results are disappointing, yes, but they view the underlying metrics as proof that the transition is moving in the right direction. Even if the league table doesn't reflect that today. I'm sorry, but that is an absolute... That sounds like a load of bollocks to me. Am I being unfair? Wow. Okay, they point to the arrival of Wirtz and Isak as the start of a 3-year cycle. We've got something else now. The board's view is that you cannot judge this team until they have a fully integrated midfield, which they feel is still 1 or 2 pieces away, particularly that defensive anchor they've been searching for since Fabinho left. You know what? When I supported Liverpool as a young lad, all right, there was... when... They just, like, whether a manager changed or not, it was Liverpool. We never went through periods of transition. We were just great and stayed great, you know. So when Klopp left, we were great. We're not now, right? So I'm not falling for this. I really think this is like club messaging, like controlled sort of thing. I wouldn't say necessarily it's hardcore propaganda or anything, but I do think that he's kissing some ass here. Or he's certainly been briefed by the people that are responsible for these decisions, I think. I'm really surprised. On Alexander Isak, we have to remember that Isak arrived with a massive price tag and the weight of being the post-Klopp talisman. He's had a stop-start season with those fitness niggles, and what we're hearing from the training ground is that it's still a process of physical adaptation to the intensity slot demands. Isak is a world-class talent, but he is currently caught in that middle ground where the team isn't yet fully built around his specific movements in the way Newcastle was. This is very friendly, don't you think? On Florian Wirtz. Florian Wirtz is the crown jewel of this new project, but there's a feeling within the analytics department that he's been asked to do too much defensive heavy lifting right now. In this transition period, Liverpool are moving from that heavy metal chaotic style that we all fucking loved to something more controlled under slot. Wirtz is brilliant in tight spaces, but he needs the structure around him to be more solid so he can stay higher up the pitch. They don't want their £130 million playmaker tracking back into his own box as often as he's had to do in the last few weeks. Well, why is that, David? On Dominic Szoboszlai. There's been a noticeable drop in Dominic Szoboszlai's high-intensity metrics over the last few games. When he first arrived, he was the engine of the press, but under slot, he's been asked to play with more discipline. The concern internally isn't his quality, as Rafa Benitez would say, quality, for sure, but his sustained impact in this more controlled system. He's essentially relearning his role to be more of a link man than a transition runner, and that's causing some friction in his natural game. Now, Simon Hughes chimed in and he said, to add to that, Dominic is one of the players who seems to be feeling the Klopp hangover the most. He was the poster boy for that relentless energy. Now he's been told to hold his position more. He's a confidence player, and right now you can see he's searching for that rhythm. Now, going back to Ornstein on Ibrahima Konate and the defence. On Konate, the contract talks are described as constructive and cordial. But the sticking point isn't just the salary, it's about availability guarantees. Liverpool are very careful with their data on his recovery times. They want a long-term commitment because he's Virgil van Dijk's natural successor as the leader of that backline. But they are balancing that against his injury record. The club wants a structure that protects him, while Konate naturally wants the security of a top-tier deal. You can only spend so much fucking money. What's wrong with these people? Both sides are optimistic, though. That's interesting that they're optimistic. I would say that it's all down to... what is it? Sorry, I was reading an email that came in then. I would say it's down to whether Real Madrid want Konate, and that's what's holding him up. So, Ornstein continues on other defensive issues, while the club secured the signing of Jeremy Jacket. I like to call him Jeremy Jacket. To help with the defensive depth, the injury situation, particularly at right back, remains a significant concern for the coaching staff in the short term. They are still dealing with the tactical void left by Trent Alexander-Arnold's passing range. The team is still learning how to build play through a central hub rather than the right-sided overlap. On Virgil van Dijk, he said he is the glue holding the transition together. Without him, the transition would look a lot more like a collapse. On future transfers, the winger and the six, David Ornstein said, I expect a wide attacker to be signed this summer. They were in for Semenyo previously. He didn't come to them, but I think that's the profile they're in the market for. Richard Hughes and the recruitment team are looking for that explosive wide forward to supplement the current options, especially as they look to refresh the front line. Using the word explosive there is interesting. I feel like that's been said to him. You know, like this, we're looking for an explosive, player, to be honest, with you, David. Explosive player. Explosive. He's a fucking good player, that's what I would say. Maybe you can't put that in print. The recruitment team still views a specialist number 6 as a missing piece of the transition puzzle for the summer of 2026, despite Ryan Gravenberg's efforts in that role. I feel like they're going to go on about this multi-transitional thing a lot. I feel it's coming. On the upcoming match versus Tottenham, both managers are in dire need of a result this weekend. This fixture serves as a stark reminder of how quickly things can change in the Premier League. For Liverpool, a win at Tottenham would provide some much-needed breathing room and validation for the hierarchy's support of slots. Okay. Now, we are going straight over now to Dave. Right, here we go. Dunk, this is a really interesting set of comments because the tone from David Ornstein is noticeably different from the tone we've been analysing in the Paul Joyce pieces. Do you see what I mean about how Dave has that ability to compare that, without me having to open anything and look, he's just be able to do it. When you slow it down, you can see why it feels surprising to you and why your viewers will probably question it. I'll break it down the same way we've done with Joyce. First impression, what kind of segment is this? This podcast section reads less like reporting and more like a structured briefing narrative. Almost every paragraph includes phrases such as the word from the hierarchy. They view this as. They point to the board's view, what we're hearing from the training ground. Those are classic information relay phrases used when a journalist is repeating internal messaging rather than investigative reporting. And that's the problem with journalism today. Because instead of a journalist coming out and saying, there's nothing in the comments, right, where he's negative anyway. And we don't need to be negative for the sake of being negative, but I think it's justified to say, it's not good enough. So there's no investigative reporting there. This is internal messaging, which really means that he's in the pocket of them. I don't mean like financially. I mean like in the pocket, like just being controlled. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, we know this, right? But I think the article is very, very obvious that. Do you not think so? I always think when Ornstein or Joyce do anything, say anything, I always think, well, who does this benefit? Why am I hearing it? What do they want me to know? And it's like he's doing the job there of helping them, rather than being an investigative reporter for us, which is what he's supposed to do. It doesn't mean the information is false, but it does mean the framing is coming from inside the club structure, that hierarchy that he's talking about. The slot job security comments. This is the key quote. Liverpool, from what we hear, are steadfastly behind Arne Slot. The hierarchy are determined that he is the man to get things right. The critical phrase is, from what we hear. That is a soft attribution. It means Ornstein is not stating a verified fact like Liverpool are behind him. He is saying the message coming from the club is that they are behind him. That distinction is extremely important. The messaging of extreme calm line, that line is the most revealing one in the entire segment. There is a messaging of extreme calm coming from the boardroom. That's the quote. That is almost an admission of controlled communication. He's basically saying the boardroom is intentionally projecting calm. That is not the same thing as saying everything is calm. It's describing how the club wants the situation perceived. And I would agree with that, because I think we've seen that in the Joyce articles, haven't we, of portraying, don't panic, stay calm kind of thing, everything's under control. The Edwards-Hughes buffer of stability. When Ornstein says the return of Michael Edwards ... has provided a buffer of stability, this does something subtle. It shifts the narrative from manager under pressure to strong leadership above him. That protects the club's structure. It suggests that the executive leadership, particularly Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes, is the stabilising force. This is often how clubs frame things when they want to avoid panic narratives. The multi-window transition narrative, this will be interesting. This phrase appears multiple times. Multi-window transition. That is a strategic framing term. Clubs often introduce phrases like this when they want to buy time, justify inconsistent results, and lower expectations in the short term. It effectively moves the conversation from why are the results poor now to this is part of a long-term rebuild. The 3-year cycle, this line is also telling. They point to the arrival of Wirtz and Isak as the start of a 3-year cycle. That's a very classic executive narrative, Dunk. It does two things. It creates a timeline for patience. It reframes the current season as year one of a project, not a finished team. Again, that benefits the manager. But notice the language pattern. Across the entire segment, Ornstein repeatedly uses phrases like the board's view, they believe, they point to, they are calling it, what we're hearing. That pattern suggests he is relaying internal explanations rather than offering his own analysis. It's effectively club perspective journalism. In other words, a fucking sellout. I hate it, mate. I don't want him to be, negative or stick it knife in. I'm not saying that in the slightest. But surely when you start your career as a journalist, you're there to represent the people. Not so much the club. It's the other way around now, isn't it? Just be honest. You can write an article which is positive, but still at the end of it say, but, it's not good enough. The fans are fucking fuming. People are bored off the tits. You might have to word it a little bit different, But seriously, the slot protection narrative. Even the criticism is structured in a way that protects slot. Look at how the responsibility is distributed. Injuries, Isak. Squad adaptation, tactical evolution, recruitment cycle, role changes, Szoboszlai, structural transition. That creates the impression of systemic, I always get confused on that word, transition rather than managerial failure. The interesting thing about the word think, you notice something important, Doug. Ornstein often says, I think, when he's speculating. Here he doesn't use that. Instead he uses attribution phrases. Example, the hierarchy are determined. That wording suggests he has heard this directly from sources, but it doesn't mean it reflects the full internal debate. It reflects the message those sources want repeated. In other words, this is what the club wants to project to us, right? But internally, there might be a different angle to what's being discussed. The Isak and Wirtz sections. These sections also contain classic narrative management. For example, Isak to adaptation process, Wirtz to doing too much defensive work, Szoboszlai to adjusting to new tactical role. All of those explanations justify inconsistent performances and reinforce the transition narrative. The real signal in this segment, the most honest line Ornstein says, is actually this. A win at Tottenham would provide validation for the hierarchy support of Slot. That sentence tells you everything. It means that the hierarchy have backed Slot publicly, but results are still needed to justify that backing. And that is, I agree with Dave, it does tell you everything. The hierarchy have backed Slot publicly, that's what they're doing, but results are still needed to justify that backing. So the support is conditional on progress. And if the support is conditional on progress, guys, that means you can still get the bullet. Is it propaganda? This is something that Dave looks for in any article by Ornstein or Joyce by default. Not exactly, but it is very close to controlled messaging. It reads like the club explaining why results are inconsistent, why patience is required, why the manager should not be judged yet. That type of narrative often comes from executive level briefings. And why it sounds surprising? Because it contrasts with the tone we saw from Joyce. This is the other journalist, the closest journalist to Liverpool. It depends. We'll go into that another day. But, Joyce is very close to the people that run the club on the day-to-day. Ornstein, I would say, is more closer to FSG. But they do interlap, you know what I mean? Joyce's articles highlighting recurring problems, question performances, raise accountability issues. Ornstein's segment explains the club's strategy, emphasises patience, spreads responsibility across the structure. So the difference, there is a difference. So Joyce is going to, performance scrutiny, whereas Ornstein is going to executive perspective. So your viewer's confusion is actually logical because Dave thinks you're going to be confused by the backing of Slot, right? Because Ornstein is essentially saying this is the message coming from inside Liverpool. Not necessarily, this is definitely the reality. That's a key distinction. My honest interpretation, though, the most likely explanation is Liverpool's leadership wants the public narrative to be calm, strategic and long-term. That protects both the club hierarchy and Liverpool head coach Arne Slot during a difficult season. But Ornstein's wording shows that what he is reporting is the messaging, not the internal debate. And I think that's a very important bit to highlight. And that concludes the analysis. And I found it fascinating, to be honest with you. I really enjoyed that from Dave there. And I wouldn't be able to see a lot of these things, to be honest with you guys. It's superb. So, what do you think? Let me know. All right, please let me know in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video or you want to support the channel, you like videos like this, please thumbs up the video. Don't sit there being bone idle. You're going to support the channel, right? So a thumbs up would be appreciated. Drop me a comment if you have got time. I know some of you are driving or you can't do that if you're maybe on a console or whatever. But drop me a comment. I really want your feedback on this. Like, were you shocked by the article when it came out? Where are you with it? Where are you with it? What do you think? Do you think Dave's right there? Do you think I'm right there? What do you think? We need to talk. We need to interact so that we can see how we all feel about this. If you want to support the channel, there's a love heart. It's a super thanks. What's that noise? If you want to support the channel, I'm glad I've just winding the video down. There's a super thanks, which is the love heart. I wouldn't be able to do these videos if it wasn't for the support I get via that facility. And also channel memberships on here. So please, if you're in a position to do that, support me, and we can continue to do some proper analysis like what we do here on this channel. And there's also 3 links in the video description, alternative methods of supporting me. And as you know, Revolut is my beer kitty. All right, so if you're going to get me a beer, it's Revolut. The others, they're more like paying the bills, unfortunately. All right, guys, let me know what you think. All right, I'm really looking forward to hearing your comments on this. I hope you enjoyed the analysis, and I'll speak with you real soon.